The unseen hand. Every day, without noticing it, we are guided by forces that exist outside of our awareness. You may believe that your morning coffee choice, the brand of sneakers you bought last month, or the opinion you just posted online were purely your own. But beneath the surface, invisible currents are shaping those decisions. These currents are not sinister conspiracies or manipulations in smoky backrooms. They are the subtle, omnipresent forces of social influence. Consider this. A man walks into a car dealership convinced he wants a silver sedan, yet he leaves driving away in a black SUV. When asked, he insists the decision was his alone. But what he doesn't realize is that his neighbor just bought the same sedan he had in mind. Not wanting to appear like a copycat, he unconsciously switched to another vehicle. He thought he was acting independently. In reality, he was being nudged by the invisible presence of someone else's choice. Human beings are social creatures. From the moment we are born, our survival depends on others. We imitate our parents' language, absorb our culture's customs, and adopt behaviors that signal belonging. Over time, this instinct becomes so ingrained that it extends into every corner of our lives. Influence does not just push us to follow others. Sometimes it pulls us to avoid doing exactly what they have done. Either way, our autonomy is less absolute than we like to think. One of the paradoxes of influence is that it thrives on invisibility. When you see an advertisement screaming at you to buy a product, your defenses rise. You resist because the attempt is obvious. But when the pressure comes quietly, when you notice everyone in a cafe working on the same brand of laptop, or when a friend casually mentions a new restaurant, your mind does not register it as persuasion. Instead, you experience it as your own idea, a genuine preference. This is the secret power of invisible influence. It works best when it hides. Take fashion as another example. Rarely do people admit, "I bought these shoes because my co-workers wore them." Instead, we create rationalizations: comfort, durability, price. Yet the deeper truth is that clothing is a language. Every color, logo, or cut speaks to others about who we are, where we belong, and how we want to be seen. Even rebels who claim to reject the mainstream often do so by joining another group that values non-conformity. Ironically, their refusal to follow one crowd leads them to follow another. These hidden forces don't just affect consumer choices, they shape politics, innovation, and morality. Why do some ideas spread like wildfire while others fade into obscurity? Why do entire societies suddenly shift their opinions on marriage, technology, or health? The answer lies not in isolated individual reasoning, but in the contagious spread of behavior across networks of people. Just as one spark can ignite a forest, one voice, repeated and mirrored by others, can transform cultural landscapes. It is tempting to imagine that we live inside our own minds, free agents in a vast marketplace of choices. But science tells another story. Behavioral research demonstrates that people often anchor their judgments on what others around them are doing. Diners tip more when they see higher tips left on a bill. Shoppers choose products that have been labeled as bestsellers, not because of the product's inherent superiority, but because of the implicit endorsement of the crowd. Even beliefs about what is moral or acceptable are deeply tied to the invisible approval or disapproval of peers. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is that we cannot fully escape these forces. Even when we try to reject influence, we remain within its grasp. Imagine a teenager who refuses to wear the popular brand of shoes at school. He insists he is acting independently. But when he chooses an alternative style favored by outsiders, he is still aligning with a group identity, just a different one. His so-called independence is still shaped by others. Recognizing this truth is not a call to despair, but an invitation to awareness. If we accept that influence is everywhere, we can begin to see its fingerprints on our lives. Rather than pretending we are immune, we can learn to ask, who is shaping my decisions? Which invisible hand is guiding me today? As we move through this exploration, each chapter will reveal a different dimension of how hidden forces sculpt behavior. We will uncover the push and pull of imitation and differentiation, the contagious energy of social proof, the paradox of wanting to stand out yet belong, and the silent sway of peers and strangers alike. Invisible influence is not about manipulation, it is about connection. It is about the ways we navigate the world together, often without realizing it. Once we shine a light on these hidden currents, we gain the power not only to understand others, but also to understand ourselves more fully. This is the journey ahead. To see the unseen, to recognize the invisible, and to understand how profoundly our lives are shaped by forces just beyond our conscious awareness. The mirror effect. One of the most basic human instincts is imitation. Long before we learn to speak, we copy. Babies mimic their parents' facial expressions, toddlers echo words they hear, and even adults unconsciously adjust their tone or posture to match those around them. This natural mirroring may seem trivial, but it is the foundation of connection. To imitate is to belong. Imagine you are at a dinner party. Without realizing it, you may sip your drink at the same moment as the person beside you. If they lean back in their chair, you might do the same minutes later. Researchers have shown that this unconscious mimicry fosters trust. People like those who subtly mirror them. Deals close faster, friendships form more easily, and strangers report feeling more comfortable when their gestures are reflected back. But the mirror effect goes beyond body language. It shapes tastes, preferences, and entire lifestyles. Consider how musical genres rise to fame. Very few people discover a band in complete isolation. Instead, they hear it at a friend's house, in a car, or on social media. The more exposure they have, the more familiar the sound becomes, and familiarity breeds preference. What begins as one person's playlist soon becomes a collective anthem. The process operates quietly. When someone buys a new phone or a stylish pair of glasses, their friends often take notice. Even if no one openly says, "I want that too," the idea begins to spread. Psychologists call this social proof, the tendency to assume that if others are doing something, it must be worthwhile. Social proof is powerful because it relieves us of the burden of endless choices. In a noisy world, following others feels safe, yet imitation is not always mindless copying. It often takes the form of subtle adaptation. Picture two co-workers who buy the same brand of shoes. One chooses black, the other brown. Both signal that they are part of the same fashion wave, but the small difference allows each to retain individuality. We copy enough to fit in, but we tweak enough to stand out. This dance between similarity and difference can be seen everywhere. Think of college students decorating their dorm rooms. Posters, furniture, and gadgets may vary, but certain elements, string lights, mini fridges, or shared slogans, create a sense of shared identity. Too much conformity would feel suffocating, while too much difference would feel isolating. Influence thrives in the middle ground. The mirror effect also has darker consequences. It explains why fads spread like wildfire and why risky behaviors sometimes escalate. When young people see their peers experimenting with dangerous activities, whether binge drinking, reckless driving, or unhealthy diets, they often follow suit, not out of conscious decision, but because the presence of others makes the behavior seem normal. What feels like personal choice is, in truth, the echo of a collective mirror. Consider financial markets. Traders are notoriously influenced by the behavior of others. When one investor sells in panic, others often imitate, sparking cascading effects that drive entire economies downward. The mirror effect magnifies risk by amplifying emotion, proving that even in high-stakes environments, humans remain social imitators at heart. At the same time, imitation fuels creativity. Artists, writers, and innovators are often inspired by what has come before them. A painter may study masters of the past, absorbing their techniques, and then add a personal twist. A tech company may replicate a competitor's design, but enhance it with unique features. Progress is rarely about total originality. It is about recombination, blending old elements into something that feels new. The paradox of the mirror is that it is both essential and invisible. We rarely notice when we are copying others, yet it happens constantly. To deny imitation is to deny our social nature. What matters is not whether we imitate, but how we channel that imitation. When guided by awareness, it can help us connect, learn, and create. When ignored, it can lead us blindly into traps. The next time you catch yourself ordering what a friend just ordered, laughing in a similar tone, or even buying a product that everyone seems to have, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, am I making this choice because I truly want it, or because I'm reflecting what I see around me? Neither answer is wrong, but the act of asking restores some measure of control. The mirror effect is the first layer of invisible influence. It reminds us that much of what we call personal taste is in fact social taste, refracted through the people we encounter. And just as a mirror shows us our reflection, society shows us ourselves, not in isolation, but as part of a larger pattern, the pull of the crowd. Step into a stadium during a championship game, and you will feel it immediately. The collective heartbeat of thousands of people moving as one. Every cheer, every gasp, every chant reverberates with the weight of unity. This is the pull of the crowd, an ancient force that magnifies emotion, shapes judgment, and drives behavior in ways we rarely recognize. Crowds are not just physical gatherings. They can be digital, cultural, or even imagined. A trending hashtag on social media can trigger the same psychological pull as a packed concert hall. The knowledge that others are paying attention, even if we cannot see them, exerts pressure on our thoughts and actions. Why does the crowd matter so much? At a biological level, humans evolved in tribes. Survival depended on sticking together. If your group fled from danger, hesitation could mean death. Over thousands of years, this instinct to follow the majority became hardwired. Today, when we see others moving in a particular direction, our brain whispers, "Trust the crowd." This instinct explains why certain products or ideas skyrocket in popularity. When a new restaurant opens and the line stretches down the block, passers-by assume it must be worth trying. They may not know the menu, the chef, or the quality, but the sight of others waiting is enough to spark desire. Scarcity and social validation merge into a potent mix. If people are willing to wait, it must be valuable. The pull of the crowd also reveals itself in emergencies. Studies show that when a person collapses in a busy street, bystanders often hesitate to help. Paradoxically, the more people present, the less likely anyone is to act. Each individual looks to the others for cues. If no one moves, the crowd silently communicates that intervention is unnecessary. Psychologists call this the bystander effect, a sobering reminder that influence can paralyze as much as it can mobilize. Yet crowds are not always passive. They can erupt with contagious energy. Riots, protests, and social movements gain strength because individuals lose themselves in the collective. Alone, a person may hesitate to shout, chant, or challenge authority. Surrounded by others, the barrier dissolves. The anonymity of the crowd gives courage, and courage spreads like fire. Advertisers and politicians understand this dynamic well. Campaign rallies, for instance, are designed to amplify emotion. A candidate's words may be persuasive, but the cheers of the audience add a layer of influence far beyond logic. Each clap and chant signals approval, nudging undecided listeners toward agreement. The message is not just "listen to me," but "look how many others already believe." Social media functions as a digital crowd amplifier. Likes, shares, and views act as visible signals of consensus. A video with 1 million views is more likely to be watched than one with 12, not because of intrinsic quality, but because the crowd has already given its stamp of approval. Platforms are engineered to exploit this instinct, turning numbers into symbols of value. But the crowd can also mislead. Popularity does not always equal truth or quality. False information spreads when it appears widely endorsed. The louder the crowd, the harder it becomes to resist. This is why conspiracy theories, viral hoaxes, and harmful trends gain traction. The pull of the crowd is neutral. It magnifies whatever is already present, whether wisdom or error. Despite its risks, the crowd is not inherently dangerous. It can also foster generosity and cooperation. Think of charity campaigns that surge after one person makes a public donation. Each contribution encourages another, creating a ripple effect. Or consider movements for environmental action, where seeing neighbors recycle or ride bikes nudges others to follow. In these cases, the crowd's influence becomes a force for collective good. Recognizing the crowd's pull allows us to navigate it more wisely. Instead of being swept along unconsciously, we can pause and ask, would I still choose this if no one else was doing it? Sometimes the answer will be yes, affirming genuine preference. Other times, the answer will expose the hidden weight of influence. The crowd reminds us of a simple truth. No one acts in isolation. Our choices, amplified and echoed by others, create waves that ripple outward, and as those waves return, they shape us in turn. To understand invisible influence, we must understand the power of the collective heartbeat, the pull of the crowd that has guided humanity for millennia. The desire to stand out. While the pull of the crowd is powerful, an opposite force runs just as deep within us. The desire to be unique. Humans do not only imitate, we also differentiate. We crave individuality, the sense that we are not merely faceless members of a group, but distinct beings with our own identities. This paradox, wanting to fit in and stand out simultaneously, drives much of our behavior. Think about car colors. For years, silver was the most popular shade in the United States. People gravitated toward it because it felt modern, sleek, and widely accepted. Yet as silver saturated the streets, its appeal faded. Buyers began shifting to black, white, or bold colors like blue and red. Why? Not because silver suddenly lost its aesthetic value, but because once everyone had it, it no longer conveyed distinctiveness. We want to belong, but not to disappear. This push and pull shapes markets in fascinating ways. Consider fashion. Trends emerge when enough people adopt a new style, but as the trend spreads, early adopters often abandon it. The very success of a style makes it less desirable to those who sought uniqueness in the first place. What was once a badge of distinction becomes a uniform. Thus, fashion is not just about aesthetics. It is about signaling difference within similarity. The desire to stand out is visible in small choices too. Picture a group of friends ordering at a restaurant. If 3 people choose the same dish, the 4th may intentionally pick something different, not necessarily because it looks tastier, but to avoid blending into the crowd. Researchers call this optimal distinctiveness, the sweet spot between conformity and uniqueness. Too much similarity feels suffocating. Too much difference feels isolating. Children express this tension early. Ask a 6-year-old whether they want the same toy everyone else has, and they may answer enthusiastically, yes. But ask a teenager, and the response shifts. I don't want to be like everyone else. Adolescence amplifies the craving for identity, often in the form of rebellion. Music, clothing, slang, all become tools for declaring independence from the mainstream, even if the rebellion itself is shared among peers. Ironically, even nonconformity becomes a kind of conformity. Subcultures thrive on difference, but within each subculture, there are rules of belonging. Punk fashion, minimalist lifestyles, or eco-conscious choices may reject the mainstream, yet they demand adherence to new norms. To be different is often to be the same as others who value difference. The desire to stand out never escapes the orbit of social influence. Companies harness this paradox in clever ways. Luxury brands, for instance, cultivate scarcity. Limited editions, exclusive releases, and high prices ensure that not everyone can have the product. Owning it signals distinction. At the same time, the product must be visible enough that others recognize its value. A luxury handbag hidden in a closet does little to establish identity. Its worth lies in being noticed. The same applies to technology. Early adopters rush to buy the newest smartphone not only for functionality, but also for the prestige of being ahead of the curve. Yet once millions own the device, the thrill of exclusivity diminishes. The cycle begins again with the next innovation. What appears as relentless progress is also the endless chase for individuality within the collective. This paradox extends beyond material goods. Opinions and beliefs often carry the same dual function. People may adopt a political stance, a lifestyle choice, or even a dietary preference, partly to express uniqueness. Vegetarianism, veganism, or paleo diets are rarely just about health. They are also about identity, signaling values that distinguish one person from another. But once a belief becomes widespread, adherence may shift again, searching for a fresh frontier of individuality. The tension between belonging and distinction is not a flaw of human nature, it is its engine. Without it, societies would stagnate. If everyone conformed completely, there would be no innovation. If everyone rebelled completely, there would be no cohesion. The balance of fitting in, while standing out, fuels cultural evolution. Recognizing this dual desire allows us to understand patterns in our own lives. When we crave the newest gadget, the rarest sneakers, or even a unique opinion, we should ask ourselves, am I chasing this because it truly suits me, or because I want to mark myself as different? Often, the answer is both. The desire to stand out reminds us that influence is not simply about conformity, it is also about differentiation, shaping who we are in relation to others, not apart from them. We are mirrors and contrasts, echoes and variations. The invisible influence of uniqueness is as powerful as the invisible influence of sameness, and together they weave the fabric of human behavior. The power of peers. If there is one force that rivals the crowd in shaping behavior, it is the influence of those closest to us, our peers. Unlike faceless masses or distant celebrities, peers exert influence through proximity, familiarity, and trust. Their approval matters, their criticism stings, and their choices often guide our own more than we care to admit. Consider high school cafeterias. Where students sit, what they wear and how they talk is less about personal preference and more about the micro-societies that form in adolescence. Peer groups signal belonging, and belonging requires conformity to group norms. A student may secretly enjoy a type of music, but avoid admitting it if the group dismisses it. Another may adopt slang, clothing, or even risky behaviors, not because of genuine desire, but because peers define what is acceptable. This influence does not vanish with age. Adults may believe they are more independent, but peer effects persist in subtle ways. When a colleague adopts a standing desk, others in the office soon follow. When neighbors install solar panels, nearby households are more likely to do the same. Researchers have found that peer comparisons even affect electricity usage. Households informed that they consume more than their neighbors often reduce their consumption, not because of cost, but because of the invisible pull of peer behavior. Peers are powerful because they occupy the sweet spot of relevance. Strangers may be too distant to matter, and authority figures may provoke resistance, but peers are equals. Their similarity makes their choices feel applicable to our own lives. If someone like us is doing something, it must make sense. At times, peer influence is explicit. Friends recommend movies, co-workers share apps, or siblings urge us to try new restaurants, but often it is silent. Simply observing what peers choose nudges us in that direction. No words are spoken, no persuasion is attempted, influence is transmitted through visibility. This can be empowering. Positive peer pressure encourages healthier habits, stronger communities, and higher aspirations. Students surrounded by diligent classmates often improve academically. Workers embedded in collaborative teams perform better. Athletes training with slightly stronger peers push themselves further. The influence of peers, when aligned with growth, can lift individuals higher than they would climb alone. But peer pressure can also be destructive. The same mechanisms that drive generosity and ambition can drive recklessness and harm. A teenager who might never consider drinking heavily may do so when surrounded by friends who normalize it. An employee who doubts a questionable business practice may stay silent if peers endorse it. In these cases, the invisible force of peers suppresses individual judgment. The dual nature of peer influence is what makes it so powerful. It can elevate or degrade, inspire or corrupt. The difference often lies not in the mechanism, but in the direction of the group's momentum. Like a river current, peer influence carries us along. Whether we reach fertile shores or dangerous rapids depends on where the group is headed. Marketers are well aware of this. Referral programs, for instance, leverage peer influence by encouraging customers to recruit friends. A company may offer a discount if you bring a peer on board, not just because it adds customers, but because people trust peers more than advertisements. If a friend recommends a product, it feels authentic. The invisible force of endorsement becomes stronger than any billboard. Even politics is not immune. Voter turnout increases when people know that their peers are participating. A simple message, "Your neighbors are voting," has been shown to boost engagement more effectively than abstract appeals about civic duty. The weight of peer comparison is heavier than lofty ideals. The key to navigating peer influence is awareness. By recognizing when we are being swayed, we can decide whether to embrace or resist the tide. If peers encourage habits that align with our values, following their lead strengthens us. If peers pull us toward compromise or danger, awareness gives us the courage to step back. In the end, peers remind us of a simple truth. Influence is not just external, it is relational. The choices of those closest to us ripple outward, shaping our own, which in turn ripple back to them. We are co-creators of one another's behavior, locked in a silent dialogue of imitation, adaptation, and response. The subtle weight of social norms. Invisible influence is often less about direct persuasion and more about silent expectations. These expectations, known as social norms, govern much of our behavior without us realizing it. Norms are the unspoken rules that tell us how to act, what to say, and even what to believe. They are not written in law books, yet they shape societies more forcefully than many official regulations. Think about elevators. There is no legal code that says you must face forward, stand quietly, and avoid eye contact, yet almost everyone follows this script. If you break it, say by turning to face other passengers, you will immediately feel the weight of disapproval. No one has to speak. The awkward silence is itself a form of enforcement. Social norms are powerful because they create predictability. They reduce the chaos of social life by signaling what is acceptable. When we walk into a library, we lower our voices. When we attend a wedding, we dress formally. These behaviors are not innate, they are learned. But once absorbed, they feel natural, as if they were our own ideas. Norms are transmitted subtly. Sometimes they spread through observation. We notice how others behave and adjust accordingly. Other times, they are conveyed through hints or gentle corrections. A child may be told, "Say thank you," or "Don't interrupt," and over time these reminders solidify into habits. Adults, too, are shaped by feedback, praise, laughter, disapproval, all of which signal whether we are aligning with the group. What makes norms especially invisible is that we rarely question them. Imagine visiting a foreign country where customs differ. Suddenly, behaviors you took for granted, tipping, greetings, eating styles, become strange or even taboo. Only then do you realize how much of your own conduct is guided by unseen rules. What feels like common sense at home is simply local conformity. Norms do not just dictate politeness, they influence morality. Consider attitudes toward smoking. Decades ago, lighting a cigarette in a restaurant was normal. Today, in many places, it would provoke outrage. Laws played a role, but shifting norms did the heavy lifting. As smoking became socially unacceptable, fewer people started the habit, and many quit. The decline was not just legal but cultural. This pattern extends to broader issues. Recycling, for example, spread not merely through regulation, but through norms. When neighbors began sorting their trash, others followed, not wanting to be seen as careless. Over time, recycling became the default behavior, reinforced less by fines than by social expectation. The power of norms can also trap us. Harmful practices, from workplace exploitation to systemic discrimination, often persist because they are normalized. People hesitate to challenge them, fearing social backlash. What is normal may not be right, yet the weight of conformity silences dissent. This is why revolutions, whether political, cultural, or moral, often begin with a few brave individuals willing to break norms. Their defiance, once visible, shows others that alternatives are possible. Marketers exploit norms too. Ads that proclaim most people prefer this brand are not just providing information, they are signaling what is socially accepted. The message is, join the majority, don't be left out. Restaurants highlight most popular dishes for the same reason. People gravitate to choices that feel endorsed by invisible consensus, yet norms are not unchangeable. They evolve with surprising speed when enough people challenge them. The shift in attitudes toward marriage equality, for instance, was accelerated by visibility. As more individuals came out, others saw that acceptance was possible. Each act of defiance chipped away at the old norm until the cultural tide turned. Understanding norms allows us to see the invisible boundaries of our behavior. We may believe we are acting freely, but often we are simply aligning with what is expected. This is not necessarily bad. Norms make cooperation possible, but awareness gives us the power to ask, do these norms serve me, or do I serve them? The subtle weight of social norms is both a stabilizer and a shaper. It ensures order, but it can also stifle change. To navigate life wisely, we must learn to recognize when norms guide us toward harmony and when they trap us in outdated patterns. Only then can we consciously decide which invisible rules to follow and which to break. The hidden language of products. Every object we own carries meaning beyond its practical use. A watch tells more than time. It tells a story about wealth, taste, or tradition. A car transports us, but it also signals identity, sporty, eco-conscious, luxurious, or practical. Products are not just tools, they are silent messengers in the language of social influence. Sociologists call this symbolic consumption, the idea that purchases are statements of who we are or who we want others to believe we are. When someone wears a designer suit, they are not simply covering their body. They are sending signals about professionalism, success, or aspiration. When another person buys second-hand clothes, they may be signaling thrift, sustainability, or rejection of consumerism. Both are speaking through products, even if unconsciously. Consider sneakers. To some, they are just footwear. To others, they are cultural symbols. A pair of limited edition Jordans is not just about comfort. It represents membership in a community, awareness of trends, and even status in certain circles. This is why people camp outside stores or pay hundreds of dollars for rare designs. The value is not in the material, but in the message. Products also create belonging. College students wearing sweatshirts with their school logo are not just keeping warm, They are declaring identity. Sports fans donning jerseys are not merely dressed, they are bonded to a tribe. These visible markers allow strangers to connect instantly. You support my team, you are part of my group. At the same time, products allow differentiation. A teenager may reject mainstream brands and choose obscure ones to declare independence. Someone may drive a hybrid not only for fuel efficiency, but to broadcast environmental values. The product itself functions as a billboard, announcing alignment with certain ideals and distance from others. Marketers understand this dual role intimately. Advertising rarely sells products on function alone. Instead, it sells identity. Perfume ads do not focus on chemical formulas. They portray sophistication, romance, or mystery. Car commercials show adventure, freedom, or prestige more than horsepower. The implicit promise is not just what the product does, but what it says about you. Yet products influence behavior in subtler ways too. Research shows that exposure to luxury goods can alter decision-making. People surrounded by symbols of wealth may behave more competitively or selfishly. Conversely, exposure to environmentally friendly products can nudge people toward altruism. Objects do not just signal identity outwardly, they shape conduct inwardly. This symbolic language is not limited to luxury. Even mundane items carry weight. A reusable water bottle suggests eco-consciousness. A worn-out wallet may imply frugality or neglect. The phone you use, the apps on your screen, the headphones around your neck, all send signals that others decode, often unconsciously. The danger lies in forgetting that products are tools, not truths. When identity becomes too tightly bound to possessions, we risk being controlled by them. People chase the newest gadget not out of need, but fear of being left behind. Fashion cycles accelerate because consumers crave the next symbol of relevance. The language of products, once empowering, can become a treadmill of insecurity. At the same time, ignoring symbolism entirely is nearly impossible. Humans are social beings. We communicate constantly, even through objects. The key is awareness. By recognizing what our purchases say, we can choose deliberately what message to send. Do we want to project success, creativity, responsibility, rebellion? Products can help us do so, but only if we use them consciously rather than being used by them. Ultimately, the hidden language of products reminds us that influence is not only verbal or social, it is material. Every item we own participates in an invisible conversation, shaping how others see us and how we see ourselves. To understand influence fully, we must learn to read this language and decide how to speak it wisely. The ripple effect of imitation. Imitation is often seen as unoriginal, even weak. Children are told to stop copying. Artists are praised for innovation, not replication. Yet in reality, imitation is one of the most powerful and invisible forces shaping human behavior. Far from being shameful, it is the glue of culture, the engine of learning, and the fuel of trends. From the moment we are born, we imitate. Babies mimic facial expressions long before they speak. They copy smiles, frowns, and gestures, absorbing social knowledge silently. As we grow, imitation remains central. We learn language by repeating sounds, customs by mirroring elders, and skills by modeling experts. Copying is the first step toward mastery. But imitation extends beyond learning. It is also a tool for belonging. Psychologists call this the chameleon effect, the unconscious tendency to mirror others' posture, tone, or mannerisms. If someone crosses their legs, we might do the same without realizing it. If they laugh, we laugh too. This mimicry creates rapport. It signals similarity, which fosters trust. We like those who resemble us, even in small ways. Marketers exploit this by training salespeople to subtly mirror customers. A repeated phrase, a matched gesture, or aligned enthusiasm makes buyers feel understood. The influence is subtle but profound. Customers perceive connection where none truly exists. Imitation also drives fashion, technology, and ideas. Why do fads spread? Not simply because of utility, but because people copy visible behavior. When celebrities wear certain styles, others adopt them. When early adopters showcase new gadgets, the crowd follows. This is why trends often snowball. The more people imitate, the more others feel compelled to join. At times, imitation creates entire cultural waves. Consider the popularity of viral dances on social media platforms. Millions of people repeat the same moves, not for originality, but for connection. Each repetition signals membership in a global community, united by shared gestures. But imitation can be dangerous too. When harmful behaviors spread, reckless challenges, misinformation, destructive fads, the ripple effect can cause real damage. The same force that spreads positive practices can amplify risks. The invisible pull to copy is powerful, whether the model is constructive or destructive. There is also a paradox. While we imitate to belong, we also crave individuality. This tension creates cycles in culture. A behavior becomes popular through imitation, but once too many people adopt it, it loses uniqueness. Early adopters then abandon it, searching for something new. Fashion thrives on this cycle of imitation and abandonment. Innovation itself often begins with imitation. New ideas rarely emerge from nothing. They are recombinations of what already exists. Artists, scientists, and entrepreneurs borrow, adapt, and reshape. The line between originality and imitation is thinner than we admit. As Picasso reportedly said, good artists copy, great artists steal. The point is not theft, but transformation, turning imitation into innovation. Understanding the ripple effect of imitation allows us to harness it consciously. Leaders who model generosity inspire generosity in teams. Communities that showcase sustainable behaviors encourage wider adoption. The key is visibility. When people see positive actions, they are more likely to repeat them. At the same time, awareness protects us from blind copying. We can ask, am I adopting this behavior because it serves me or because it signals belonging? Not all trends are worth following. Not all models deserve imitation. Recognizing influence helps us choose consciously rather than unconsciously echoing others. In the end, imitation is neither good nor bad. It is a force. It shapes culture, spreads ideas, and builds social bonds. It ripples through societies silently, creating patterns of similarity and difference. By seeing its power, we can decide when to flow with the ripple and when to resist it. The power of the crowd. Crowds are often viewed with suspicion. Images of mobs, panics, or frenzied fans dominate our imagination. Yet beyond these extremes, crowds reveal something fundamental about human behavior. We are profoundly shaped by the presence and actions of others. Alone, we decide one way. Surrounded by a group, our choices shift, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. The power of the crowd begins with social proof. When uncertain, people look to others for guidance. If everyone in a restaurant is laughing at a joke, we are more likely to laugh, even if we didn't find it funny. If others are clapping, we clap too. Applause spreads not just because of appreciation, but because silence feels awkward when surrounded by noise. Experiments illustrate this vividly. In one famous study, actors in a waiting room stared at the ceiling. Unaware participants soon joined, assuming there must be a reason. Another classic test placed people before lines of different lengths. When Confederates deliberately gave the wrong answer, many participants followed, even though their eyes clearly told them otherwise. The pull of the group outweighed personal judgment. This conformity effect is not limited to trivial matters. It shapes politics, morality, and risk-taking. People are more likely to donate if others have already contributed. They are more likely to speed if surrounding cars drive fast. They may even suppress their true opinions in meetings, nodding along with the majority to avoid standing out. The crowd doesn't just influence, it silences dissent. Yet crowds can empower too. Collective action enables movements, protests, and revolutions. When individuals see others resisting injustice, they gain courage to join. What was once unthinkable, challenging an empire, demanding equality, becomes possible through visible solidarity. The same force that pressures conformity can also inspire transformation. Crowds also create collective intelligence. When diverse groups pool perspectives, they often outperform individuals. Guessing the weight of an ox, predicting election outcomes, or solving puzzles, crowds frequently generate accurate results when independent opinions are aggregated. The wisdom of crowds emerges when variety and independence are preserved. But when conformity dominates, crowds become foolish rather than wise. Marketers and politicians know how to leverage crowd psychology. A line outside a nightclub signals exclusivity. A bestseller list signals value. Campaign rallies amplify energy by surrounding individuals with cheering masses. The crowd doesn't just reflect enthusiasm, it magnifies it, creating feedback loops of influence. The digital world intensifies this dynamic. Online reviews, likes, and shares function as virtual crowds. A product with thousands of 5-star ratings feels safer to buy than one with none, even if we never meet the reviewers. Viral content spreads because people assume that if millions watched it, it must be worth seeing. Social proof, once limited to physical presence, now operates globally in real time, but the crowd's power comes with risks. Groupthink, peer pressure, and mob behavior reveal the dangers of unchecked conformity. Crowds can suppress creativity, punish dissent, and escalate conflict. What feels rational within a group may look irrational from outside. History offers countless examples of societies swept into destructive behavior by collective momentum. To navigate crowds wisely, we must distinguish between influence and insight. Are we following because the group sees something we don't, or simply because we fear standing apart? Are we benefiting from collective wisdom or surrendering to collective error? Ultimately, the power of the crowd lies in its dual nature. It can make us laugh when we want to stay silent, but it can also give us courage to speak when we feel afraid. It can blind us, but it can also open our eyes. The key is awareness, to recognize when the crowd is guiding us toward truth and when it is pulling us away from it, choosing our own path. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered the hidden forces shaping behavior: imitation, norms, products, crowds, and the subtle pull of others. The central lesson is clear. Influence is everywhere, often invisible, yet deeply powerful. But awareness alone is not enough. The question that remains is, what do we do with this knowledge? The first step is recognition. Most people believe they act independently, guided solely by personal choice. In reality, many individual decisions are echoes of the group. The clothes we wear, the music we enjoy, even the food we order. These often emerge from patterns of exposure and imitation. By pausing to ask, why am I choosing this, we bring hidden forces into view. The second step is discernment. Not all influence is harmful. Social norms keep order. Imitation fuels learning. Crowds empower change. The key is deciding which influences serve our goals and which lead us astray. If recycling spreads because neighbors do it, the result benefits everyone. But if reckless behavior spreads for the same reason, awareness allows us to resist. The third step is intentionality. Once we see influence clearly, we can use it deliberately. Want to build healthier habits? Surround yourself with people who practice them. Want to foster creativity? Expose yourself to diverse models, not just familiar ones. Influence works best when chosen, not blindly absorbed. We can also flip the lens outward. How do we influence others? Every action, visible or invisible, sends ripples. When we speak up in meetings, we give others permission to voice their thoughts. When we choose sustainable products, we signal values to peers. When we break outdated norms, we create space for new ones. Influence is not just something done to us, it is something we constantly project. Importantly, freedom is not the absence of influence. To live in society is to be shaped by others. Absolute independence is an illusion, but freedom lies in awareness and choice, in knowing the forces at play and deciding when to follow, when to resist, and when to lead. History is filled with examples of individuals who saw invisible influence clearly and chose their own path. Innovators who refused conformity, reformers who challenged unjust norms, artists who imitated, transformed, and created anew. Their lives remind us that while influence is powerful, it is not destiny. Consciousness transforms constraint into opportunity. In a world where trends, crowds, and products constantly vie for attention, the challenge is not to escape influence, but to navigate it wisely, to ask, does this choice reflect my values or just social pressure? Does this path bring me closer to who I want to be, or merely closer to who others expect me to be? The hidden forces that shape behavior will never disappear. They are part of what makes us human. But by understanding them, we gain the ability to bend them, to use them as tools rather than chains. Influence, once invisible, becomes visible, and with visibility comes power. The power to shape not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us. The ultimate lesson of invisible influence is not that we are puppets, but that we are participants in a grand dance of social connection. Others shape us, and we shape others in return. The task is not to escape the dance, but to learn its steps, and then, when the music calls for it, to create steps of our own.